we can see everything.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm talking to ARE and IED. Are we still waiting for participants, or should we start right away?
Hello, hello everyone. I think we can wait for like 2 minutes because usually we have like 20 participants at least. So maybe there are a few more that are going to connect in like 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Rin. In the meantime, if everyone who is already here wants to share in the chat, so open the chat window in this Teams window, and you can maybe write your name, what was this was suggested by Irie the last time. So name, company, and
country, location,
countries of operation. Yeah, and countries of operation. Yeah, thank you. Okay, it's 35 already, so considering the extent of what we have to cover, I would suggest that we start maybe, and anyone who joins will be very welcome to join along the way. So welcome everyone. My name is Guilain Jalali. I am an ESG specialist and working here with IED. I think all of you were in modules 1 and 2 already. So is anyone here new to this series of trainings? You can either raise your hand or write it in the chat. No, okay. So I don't think we need formal more introductions about what's going on, so I will jump right into it. So today I will present with Viviane Venderino, who is the CEO of Kudura, who operates in Kenya mostly, but not only. He will present himself later, and he will give us a presentation, a specific presentation around e-waste management. So we have 3 hours from now, 2 hours 54 minutes. And so we will talk today about topics that are more related to initial screening and exclusion, so biodiversity, land acquisition, cultural heritage, so those are topics that are mostly that are really important to look at screening level. So we will look at that, and then how to manage them along the project life cycle. We will talk as well about the life cycle of especially of batteries and solar panels. Yeah. I didn't mention, Rin, who has opened her video as well, was coordinated the project for IED, so she might intervene also during the presentation. Yeah. I also didn't present her, but another expert who worked with us, ESG expert, is Karen Nash, who is present in the here in the call in this meeting. So the objectives for today, first of all, to run the screening checklist in more details, and especially to look at those topics that are so critical, especially land acquisition and biodiversity, that are critical for financiers, and can be surprises when you come the due diligence phase for financing. So talking, and we will talk in more detail, as you requested also in the former trainings, about physical and economic displacement, so land acquisition and the process when people are occupying the land already in whatever way. We'll talk quickly about cultural heritage as well. And by habitat here, it's how we address biodiversity issues. There are so many questions around that, so we will try to finish this training with a clear idea of especially what is expected by a financier at the moment of the due diligence process, when what will they look at and what will they expect from you to comply with international standards. And the same about battery and panel life cycles. So what they actually do expect and what you can do depending on your on the size, maturity, etc. of your project. All right. So this is our general program for today. So as a first, as an intro to our session today, we have 5 questions. So you're familiar now with this process. So the idea would be that you answer in the chat. So for example, Q1, the answer that so 1 to 5. Just to give us and everyone here an idea of where we're at in terms of how familiar and confident you are with those topics we are dealing with today. So the question is, how confident are you with? So the first one is screening a site, a potential site for a mini grid for protected areas or critical habitats. So we're talking about biodiversity before committing capital or making the decision go no go for a site. And so you can write Q1, and so how confident you are, 1 to 5. And as a side question, have you ever run IBAT? So I will not explain for now what it is. If you have run it, then you can say yes. So you can write Q1 1 yes, for example, as an answer. So we give you maybe a couple of minutes, just 1 minute to answer the first question for now. And actually, yeah, thank you very much. There is an answer already with the 5 answers. So if you want to answer that way, so all answers at once, it's actually very helpful. You can do it that way. Thank you for that. So I will go through the questions actually. So the first one is about biodiversity. The second one, are you confident with knowing that land acquisition will trigger either a resettlement action plan or a livelihood restoration plan? So how familiar are you with those documents and concepts? Number 3, are you confident with handling a finding of a cultural or sacred site during construction? So if you're during even small excavation work, there is a find, do you know how to handle it? The 4th question is screening the environmental and social practices of your suppliers for panels and batteries. And the 5th one is about end-of-life disposal of panels and batteries. So 4 supplier screening and 5 e-waste. How do you deal with used panels and batteries? All right. So for now, we have quite a variety of answers. In general, it seems that on the biodiversity topic, everyone has at least like basis, if not like a good understanding of it. Land acquisition is a bit less. Yeah, so we will focus a little bit more, and this was anyway what we planned on doing, to focus more on land acquisition and populations displacement, which is quite a complex topic with also the cross of the national law and the international standards that can be quite confusing. So cultural and sacred sites, yeah, again, a variety. So it's good that we talk about it. In any case, it's not a very complex. I mean, it's not such a complex topic. And screening and supplier screening and end of life. It's interesting that several of you are familiar with, quite familiar with screening suppliers for practices, because it could seem to be a complex topic. And end of life, yeah, quite a variety also. Interesting. Okay. You can continue answering. It's anyways. If for those who haven't answered yet, give us the answers to those questions. It's a lot of variety. It's really interesting. Okay. So thank you for that. If you want to continue answering, feel free to do so. I will go on with the presentation. But from what you are answering, it seems that yeah, first of all, there is a diversity of confidence regarding the topics. End of life seems to be in general less. Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's difficult to draw, but we will focus a bit more on land acquisition, that's for sure. And regarding the life cycle, more on end of life than on screening, and it was anyways what we planned on doing. So that's perfect. So moving on. As I said already, today's topics, we will talk about land acquisition, about biodiversity, about heritage, and panels and batteries life cycle. First, I will introduce the topics in general and the tools from the toolkit that we will be using. In module 2, you looked at the stakeholder engagement, which is something that you start from the beginning, and that you it's quite a complex and integrated process. Here we're looking at topics that mostly you can screen from the beginning and already avoid from the start of the project, and avoid yourself further costs in time. So land and resettlement, in the ESG environmental and social consultant and financier world, we look at the performance standard or operational safeguard from the IFC or from the African Development Bank number 5. So usually the question is PS5 triggered? That's what the question we ask. So PS5 or OS5 is land and resettlement. PS5 OS6 PS6 OS6 is biodiversity and habitat. By habitat we talk about ecological habitats and ecosystems, and PS or OS number 8 talk about cultural and sacred heritage. What are we talking about? Land and resettlement, we're talking about displacement of population, whether it's a single individual, it's a household, several households, whole village. It's in any from one person who has any kind of activity on a site, whether it is living there, having a house, or any form of residence or shelter, or any activity, whether it is temporary or permanent, whether it is formal or informal, whether they have a title or not. In any case, anyone, even if it's on a grazing route for a herder, for example, or it's any of those cases, if the land has one of those uses, we consider that PS5 is triggered, so that there will have to be some form of action and compensation for the users. So that's PS5 OS5 and what we will look at the most today. PS6 OS6, we are talking about all forms of sensitive habitats, ecological habitats. So we're talking about wetlands, forests, protected areas of any kind. It can be classified forests, it can be national parks, etc. Whether it's national, so protected by law, or international, and those we will look at the international denominations and networks that they are protected. There are areas of particular sensitivity that are recognized as of international value. So we will mostly talk about key biodiversity areas. This is a specific term, and also it includes migratory routes for birds, for example, and one big topic we'll be looking at is if your site is within, overlapping, or adjacent to such area, what do we do? It's often a question, and so this is the second topic we're looking at. And when we talk about cultural and sacred heritage, we will look at it in more detail, but it can be visible or not. So a burial ground, shrines, sacred sites of any kind. It can be a natural element in the landscape. It can be underground. It can be, so this we will look at also a bit more in detail, and how to handle it, especially for smaller and less mature projects or developers. So all of those you can avoid at site selection process. If there is any question or any doubt, feel free to write in the chat or raise your hand in the chat. Otherwise, I just go forward. The last topic we will talk about is life cycle of solar panels and batteries. So here we look at upstream suppliers. This is a topic financiers are now quite sensitive to, especially regarding rare metals extraction. There is one, well, we'll talk about it, but there is one particular area, for example, in China that is an exclusion criteria for solar panels and battery suppliers for now most financiers. And there is also in the US and in Europe, there are regulations that are existing or upcoming on that topic to forbid importations of those. We have safety, so this will look less. We won't look at it actually at all today, but there is the issues, the safety issues, especially regarding batteries, so battery management during installation and operation. And what we'll look at more particularly, and Viviane from Kudora will give us a specific presentation on that, on the extensive work they did with Kudora on that, on the end of life of panels and batteries. And especially the diversity of possibilities, depending on the country you are in, you might have certified networks that are more or less easily accessible or nothing at all. And so how do you deal with that when you communicate with your financiers? So yeah, we look at those two. So this is not a topic for screening, but it's a topic that is often overseen at the environmental and social impact assessment process and should be looked at. So in the performance standards and operational safeguards of the IFC and African Development Bank, it's part of several of those. Especially in number 3 on pollutions and contamination, so waste management, basically. Number 2 on work conditions for supplier screening. Number 4 on community health and safety. Again, communities upstream, safety during operations, and health and safety, waste management. If the waste stay lying around, they can cause risks for the communities. So this is something that needs to be budgeted and looked at and documented, and that will be requested from you at the due diligence stage by financiers. When I address you, I'm talking to developers. I know that there might be there are probably financiers also in the room. So, but yeah, I'm talking usually directly to developers. Yeah. So this is just a reminder from module 1. Where we looked at the process, the environmental and social requirements along the life of a mini-grid development project, site selection, feasibility and permits, including environmental and social impact assessment. Here, the due diligence, so the diligence from your future financial partner, construction and operations phases, and end of closing of the site and decommissioning. We will be looking at site selection, so with the site screening tool, and we will be looking at construction and operations with the management plans So this one of the tools that I will present is the tool that a template that we prepared. That is the health, safety, environment, and social plan. So it's a series of plans that I will present, and of which we will look in detail into a few of them. This is just a reminder. It's just a copy paste of the slide we had in module 1, and also we will talk again. As we did in module 1 and module 2, level 1, level 2, level 3. So level 1 is smallest are the smallest and mini grids, and level 3 are the highest capacities and or clusters with more means and more expectations also from financiers. So we always try to give solutions also for level 1, so smaller mini grids, often in more remote areas, and with lesser revenues and lesser human resources also to manage environmental and social issues. So we always try to adapt and to give adapted and gradual responses to all of those. So this is just a reminder. You all know this already. If we need to go back to those definitions, please feel free to ask. But I will move on now. And so this is again something that we presented in module 1. So again, the same stages, and we will talk about today. We will look in detail at the environmental and social screening checklist, which is our tool 1.1. And as I told you, health, safety, environmental and social management plan, which is our tool 3.3. We will look into the general document and into specific plans within the HSES management plan. To mention also, so those you looked at yesterday, stakeholder engagement plan, grievance redress mechanism, the monitoring, also the gender action plan you looked at yesterday, sorry. The monitoring tools you will look at in module 4. Today we made the choice. We could have presented also, so for the environmental and social impact assessment, the toolkit, in the toolkit we have tool 1.2, which is we just provided a template of terms of reference to recruit a consultant to conduct or specialized consultancy to conduct your ASIA. So this I will not present because it's really a basic template. And something we also prepared is clauses for your contract with your construction contractor. So environmental and social clauses. So this I won't present either because most of it is also part of the plans here, and we don't have so much time, and it's really also basic templates. So, but I just want to mention them because they go along with what we will present today in terms of management of biodiversity during construction and operation, etc. Waste management. Someone has their microphone open.
As duas opções, Silvestre, quer dizer, que a FUNAI que nos trouxe.
I'm sorry, someone, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. One last thing about this slide. We will not present, we will talk about those tools and which are the resettlement action plan and the livelihood restoration plan, which are only needed in case how do you say, in case PS5, so population displacement, physical or economical, is triggered. Yeah, and so we will present those as well today, but not look into the detail, but talk about them when they are triggered and how to deal with it. All right. So if that's clear for everyone, if there is any question at this stage, feel free. Once again, can raise your hand on the general screen, or type your question in the chat as well. It's very welcome. And and otherwise I will just continue. I didn't mention, at some point we will have a 15 minutes pause. If you feel it's enough information and you would like a pause, you can also suggest it in the chat. But it should be probably around, I would say, 3 p.m. CEST. So after 1 hour and a half of in the middle of the training. Yeah, so let's go into the detail of the screening checklist, and it's to present you the tool into more detail, but also it's really our first approach to those huge topics that are land acquisition and biodiversity. Before that, another reminder. So just to tell you, this slide is here. We can come back at any moment. A reminder that so financiers and international institutions use this categorization. So the reference categorization by the World Bank, the AfDB, etc., is category C, low or negligible environmental and social risk. Category B, moderate risk. So there are risks, but they are manageable and limited to the site or immediate environment, and not much like the usual resources are sufficient to deal with them. And category A, high risk, and there we heavy measures and action plans and external consultancy and resources are necessary to manage and reach compliance with international standards. So we are looking at those two categories, and since there is a huge gap between moderate risk and high risk, most financiers work with the category B+, which means the project doesn't reach the category A of really critical high like risk at a national scale, or impacting large ranges of populations or critical habitats, etc. But still the level of risk is enough, and the level of resources that are needed to mitigate them, attenuate them, avoid or compensate them is high enough that we can't consider it as a moderate risk anymore. It's substantial enough to put it in category B+. From my explanation, so you feel that it is subjective. There are elements that are clear. If the project directly impacts a critical habitat, you are immediately bumped into category 1. So there are quantifiable immediate criteria that trigger a category A. But in general, category B plus will depend on the financier and the expertise, and so it's a bit. We mentioned already. I remind you, we created a grid. A matrix with all the criteria and the categories and what trigger the criteria that trigger each category. We are not presenting it in these trainings because it is still being reviewed, and as I said, it's quite subjective. And such a document, if it goes along a toolkit that is produced by the African Development Bank and the IFC, would become a reference. And it has to be very scrutinized. It will be scrutinized, and it has to be very reviewed by all institutions and specialists to make sure that it can be actually used, and it will satisfy all the financiers that might work with it, and that it satisfies also the standards of the World Bank and the African Development Bank. So it is being reviewed. We don't know if we will put it in the toolkit or not, but the idea is to have a tool where you can clearly, you have a checklist and you say, okay, this criteria puts us immediately into category B, this one category, etc., and to have a document that helps you do your own assessment and see if you can be classified as category C or not, or B or B+, etc. All right, so this is just a reminder, and the last reminder about this is that those categories are international standard and financiers. they are not the same as national regulations. So all or most national regulations on environmental and social impact assessments and environmental and social evaluation have their own levels of usually it's annexes in the law, or I don't know, and they have category 1, B2, or it's not the same. The fact that a project is category 1 in a certain country doesn't mean that a financier will consider it as category as one of the ABC categories. So it's this evaluation is independent of the legal national classification. All right. So if everyone is, if all of this is clear for everyone so far, I'll move on and we can so we can look at the screening checklist. So it's what we call the fail fast. So it's something that it's a tool that can tell you quickly whether you go or not for a certain decision. That will help you identify red flag risks before you choose a site and commit capital to it. So it has 4 parts: description of the project, and those are the 2 important parts. So the one is we look at exclusion criteria. So there are 4 or 5 of them, and if one of them is met, then usually level 1, level 2 developers will not go for the project or talk with the financier to assess whether it's worth it to commit resources to attenuate the risks there. So those are really, I mean, there are no goes for level 1s, that's for sure, and level 2s usually as well. And then we have a second on the risks and the screening checklist, the second part, which is the non-critical risks. So we look at all the general criteria at the site screening that might bump your project into category B, category B+, or even category A. And the last part is the final validation and signature of the screening. So those 4 parts, the documents or the template that I will present to you now, they are deliverable to your financier and for your environmental and social due diligence in itself. So if you fill up this document and sign it and document it, it's not a lot of documentation. It's already something that supports your commitment to environmental and social compliance in front of your financier. Yeah, and so looking into it, so yeah, the idea also is that it's really it's something that is quick and easy and cheap to do and to avoid potentially high remediation costs or expertise costs or delays with the financiers later on. So this, I will maybe, I think I will open it. I will open it right away. There should be there is no link. Just to show the structure. All right, here it is. So, can you see a Word document on your screen, and is it big enough that you can read what's on the screen now, or should I zoom in?
I think you should zoom in a bit.
All right.
You can see the screen, but you cannot read anything. Yes.
Okay. Is this better? Can everyone read what's on the screen now?
Yes.
All right. So, Yeah, there should be a React button on your in the Meet in the Teams window. In my screen in my window, it's on the top right edge. There is tools. There are tools in the Teams window, and one of them is a smiley, a little emoji face, and says React. And there you can you can choose if you want to react easily without having to write in the chat or so the toolkit, the screening checklist. So we already presented the structure. There is an introduction box, a box of if you do nothing else, what to do. So in the case of the screening checklist, answer every question in the exclusion criteria table, which we will look at. And any yes in the exclusion criteria means that the site must be reconsidered or dropped. Walk the site boundary and speak to at least one woman and one elder from the community. So that's the invitation. You probably all talked quite extensively about it yesterday in module 2. Check land tenure status in writing before any works begin. So the land tenure topic we will talk about today, and it's as early as you can have all the documentation and the understanding of exactly who uses and who occupies and who owns the land is the best. So the gender-based violence, conflict history in the area, this you talked about yesterday, and then file the signed checklist of this document and archive it to present it to your financier when comes the time. So those are those boxes always give you the minimum to do with that tool. And here, so before you start, something that is the three big things to do. We will talk also about biodiversity and using IBAT, the IBAT tool. So this is desk work that you do before that you can do to check on the biodiversity situation. But here, so land tenure arrangement. We are talking about so any formal title, any customary traditional rights, any informal use as well has to be identified. And financiers are particularly sensitive to women who use land. So households led by women or women on their own using land with or without a title, a formal title. And so obviously you cannot work only with official registers, le cadastre as we say in French, or formal titles. So it's really a work that requires multiple entries and multiple checks. Of course, with the legal authorities, state and local representatives like the municipality, the traditional authorities, and then also local population. So talking with neighbors, with people who are there, checking by yourself if the land has been cultivated, asking around, has it been cultivated recently, what is there, asking. And when you talk with elders, they will have the knowledge, they know what happened here. They will tell you that there is that person that was growing cassava here, or that family, that etc. So you build very quickly just talking around the history of the site, and then you have official records, you have signed agreements or titles, or I don't know, that are officialized or not. Then you have informal information that you get on the site, and you have the traditional law, however it is managed, whether it's written or not. So you have to cross all this data, and all of this data is valid. and needs to be used. And for level 1, you need to make sure that no one used the site recently, or so by level 1 I mean level 1 developers or sites, so smaller mini grids. So we are talking about very small areas. So no one used the site, that there is no that there is no recent or current use of the site, and that you have a clear vision of who owns the land, who uses it, who has a concession, who has a traditional right to use it, etc. So the others you talked about yesterday, about gender-based violence and conflicts history, and indigenous people presence, so I will not go into it. But this is really basic knowledge plus IBAT that I will present on biodiversity, and you have already a first big overview. So I will leave it here for now. No, just to present just to present quickly the structure once again. Yes. So I'm going down in the document. So we have here section 1, project identification and technical specification. So this is the first big block of our screening tool. It includes, among others, the history of the land, so land tenure, as we just spoke, target community. So it's basically presentation of the land and your project, including the human context. Section 2, as I said before, exclusion criteria. So those are the questions that if the answer is yes, here you probably will have to drop the site or seriously reconsider it. So there are 5 of them. Section 3, non-critical environmental and social screening table. So here you have the other topics, as I mentioned before. We will look into it later on. And the final validation. So in annex, you will index the list of stakeholders you interviewed or met. If possible, disaggregated by gender, and and who completed it, who reviewed. So it has to be signed. And the recommendation for whether the site is approved, if it's excluded, approved this condition, or and if further assessment is required to explain. So that's the screening tool. In a glimpse, we will look more into the detail of biodiversity, land acquisition, and cultural heritage later on. And I will now present the other tool we will be looking at today, which is the Health, Safety, Environmental and Social Plan. So it's tool number 3.3 of our toolkit. This is the initial block. Drafted by the environmental and social manager, or the equivalent in your structure, validated at the highest level possible in the company, and implemented by environmental and social manager, or whoever has this position in your structure, community liaison officers, and contractors, and their health, safety, environment, and social managers, representatives, contact points, etc. So it's something that is implemented continuously. This tool, the plan goes and has also construction and an operation aspect to it. So both have to be taken into account, and site closing and decommissioning. at end of life, and it has to be reviewed. So here we suggest every six months, but it's I mean it's a document that has a life and needs to be updated depending on evolutions of the site and also during operations, noticing if certain parts are outdated or insufficient or need corrections, etc. So this is the detail of the contents. So this you're all familiar with. There is the OHS Occupational Health and Safety Plan. So this in the template, the tool you will have, there is a draft or a template for all of those, and the idea is that you have a basic template that would cover most of the issues or topics for solar mini-grid, and it's for you to adapt it to your site then, but you have most of the content and the structure. And this also, this tool, so you can choose either you present your OHS plan, your emergency preparedness and response plan, etc., as separate standalone documents, or you can choose to use this template, for example, to have everything in one document. This is helpful because then you have it's something that is easy to present to your financier, and it's already documented. So OHS plan, emergency preparedness and response plan, resource efficiency and pollution prevention, so water quality, dust and air quality, noise, measurement of spills, etc. This is especially, I mean, this will it's especially for construction, and also since you in general have gensets, diesel generators on your site, the management of hydrocarbon, of gasoline and diesel, and that, and all the logistics that are associated. Okay, waste management plan number 4. So this one we will talk about today, especially, I mean, we'll talk not especially, but only about the e-waste part, which is half of the waste management plan. Supply chain screening and assessment. So you have a template here as well that gives you step-by-step also of what can be done around that. We will talk about it quickly today. Community health and safety plan, traffic management plan, biodiversity conservation, or biodiversity management plan, which is only for level 2 and above. So a level 1 project is not required to have a biodiversity plan, unless specific case where it was accepted that there are sensitive, ecologically sensitive areas close by, or but this has to be discussed with the financier. And it includes also a model of a transparent procedure. So what to do when you find a sacred or cultural artifact or element during construction. There is also a template for that, and we will look at it today. So yeah, this is the tool 3.3, and so we will look at those 4 today. So I pause 30 seconds here, just if there is any question about what was mentioned until now, you can put it in the chat, write it in the chat. This was just an intro of the tools we will be working on and the topics we will be addressing today. So yeah, and we will start with biodiversity and habitats. So when we talk about biodiversity, the separation, the reference of performance standard and operational safeguard number 6 is the notion of habitat. We talk about modified, natural, or critical habitat. There are 3. It's a 3 levels definition. Modified means that human activity has degraded or significantly transformed the vegetal cover, and the biodiversity there is considered as not significantly of low value, and requires less management resources or actions. Natural means that the vegetal cover here has been growing naturally for a certain an extended period of time. So it has been degraded before or not, but has been growing naturally for a certain. So those are this is biodiversity that is not considered as critical, so it doesn't, and this is where I define critical. Critical, we talk about critical habitats, endangered species, and this is defined by the IUCN Red List, which is the reference document that is used to assess every financier, ESDD, environmental consultant will look. This is really the international reference for whether the conservation status of a species. So this is critical habitat. Second criteria or will be that the area is considered a key biodiversity area. So there is the definition of key biodiversity area is it has various layers to it, but several elements, whether it's it can be ecosystems that are specific, it can be presence of endemic species, of endangered species, etc. And so an area that hosts such species or such ecosystems, or that is part of a wider sensitive ecosystems, or is a route of migration for certain species of interest, etc. All of those, there is a register that is defines and provides the delimitations of key biodiversity areas. And globally significant wetlands or forests. So the critical habitats are biodiversity components and areas that are considered as important and that require specific modalities of management. So this is where whenever a project impacts critical habitat, it's bumped into category A right away. So level 1 is a no-go. And other levels, level 2, usually we avoid as much as possible, and if not, then we have to talk with consider support from the financier to assess with biodiversity experts and develop a biodiversity management plan. And for bigger projects, it's really support from external expertise and developing the plans for avoiding, mitigating, and last resort compensating any impact. But so this is quite costly. Once if you have to go into this process, you will have to hire external resource, external expertise, and to develop conservation management and biodiversity management plans. For what is non-critical, so modified or natural habitats, impacts on the biodiversity there is either non-significant or manageable with mitigation. So this is what we are looking for. And so yeah, it's all habitats that don't have a critical feature. So yeah, we will look at how you screen those now. So in the tools, the tool number 1.1, site screening checklist, the question is your site located in or adjacent, and this is quite important, or adjacent to a critical habitat? And you have the list of habitats, of possible habitats, and the guidance, the guidebook that goes with this toolkit, and that will be presented to you in module 4, will also provide more detail about what is a critical habitat and what are the sources, with links, the resources that you can check to find your the critical habitats around your site. But the most commonly used, because it gathers resources from the major services providers, like it's not service providers, it's institutional providers of information regarding endangered species, protected areas, key biodiversity areas, etc., is called IBAT. So it means Integrated Biodiversity Assessment tool. So I will present it. It looks like that, the tool itself. So of course those maps you can screen on, but you can see here all those are the different kind of protected areas that you can find worldwide. So just one thing is how to check. Run IBAT, so we will look at it right now, but also ask your local forestry and environmental authorities. This is something that is often overlooked, but the direction, depending on the country, there are different departments, but it can be departments of water and forestry, or department of forestry, or of natural resources, or parks, etc. So they know which, or they are supposed to know where are classified forests or protected areas in the area, and to know also what endangered species or specific biodiversity features might be found in the area. So this is also like reinforces your assessment quite a lot. So if we look at IBAT, so before looking at it, a little question for you, if you want to answer during the answer in the chat. Have you heard of IBAT already? I know that at least one person in the initial chat said that they are quite familiar with it. So yeah, okay. Most of you heard of it. It seems, and you used it. Okay, so we won't go much into the detail. Maybe has anyone? Is it useful that I show it now, or? Okay, don't answer the question I asked. Continue answering. So everyone who answers already knows or has used it.
No, there is actually one answer. Dr. Farad saying it's the first time.
First time. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, yes. I missed this one. Okay. So I will quickly present it. It's so I won't go too long on it, but so this is how the welcome page looks like. So it requests you have to log in, but there is a free how do you say? You can access it freely. There are paying services. If you want the shapefiles and the layers, they make you have to pay for it. So I go into that data map here, and I will go randomly. I don't know. I go to the southeast of Cameroon, and so here, for now, I don't have layers. I just have really I have the national parks only, and then I can apply layers, and I will look. So layers that are proposed are key biodiversity areas, protected areas, and these are the two we usually look at. And key biodiversity areas, I will just select them all. And you see that in this particular case, the KBA, so key biodiversity areas, they superpose with the national parks. If I unclick that, you see. Yeah. So here, and probably the same will go with a protected. So I select all protected areas. And yeah, so it superposes again. So in this case, this is a simple case where everything is more or less superposed. And then you have the detail. And something else that we look at is IUCN management category. So the IUCN is the International Union for Nature Conservation. Oh no, what is the conservation of? I don't remember. I haven't looked at the. And so there are classes of management that are a bit. This is maybe a little bit more complicated, but usually we look at 1 to 4. And you see, again, it superposes with what we already have. Sorry. Okay. So just I'll just move around a little bit to see. So yeah, if your site, wherever your site is, you will know where it is compared to the next KBA or protected area, and yeah, and if it overlaps, and what distance if it's adjacent to a site. So that's basically how IBAT looks like. Yeah. If there is any, I don't think it's necessary to go further in that. You can, if you have questions, we can you can type them in the chat, and there will be spaces to exchange. But this is really so. What you do. Yeah, what you do when you screen for in your screening tool, you can just provide a screenshot of like a zoomed enough of IBAT with the location of your site added, and that's. But usually, anyways, your financier will look at IBAT already, so it's. But for you, it gives you immediately, if you are in the middle of a KBA, you know it's a KBA key biodiversity area. It's probably a no-go. Yeah, and then the non-critical screening. So we looked at the exclusion, biodiversity as an exclusion criteria. So if it is through IBAT, you realize that it's within or close, let's say within 5 kilometers more or less of critical habitats or like international area of international interest or protected area, then you are in the exclusion list, and you can consult with your financier to see if it's worth it to continue exploring the possibility of installing mini green on this particular site. And then, so the non-critical screening, you have only 2 questions. One is the land within or adjacent to a legally protected area? So it can be a forest reserve or classified forest, national park, wetland, any area that is protected legally, or an area of ecological interest, so using IBAT, and or asking your local forestry or environmental authority. And then the second question is, will the project require significant clearing of vegetation or deforestation? So we're talking usually about small sites, especially for level 1 developers. So and so if this is really, you also in your screening toolkit, in your screening tool, sorry, you will put photos of the site in annex, so it's clear that you're not. You're not deforesting a site or a significant portion of forest to install your site. So this is just by the site. Looking at the site, you will know. But usually, I don't think you would install a mini grid on a site that is previously forested, like with actual yeah. Thank you. I'm reading the chat now. Okay. About IBAT. So this is for bigger projects only if PS6 or OS6, so the standard about biodiversity, is triggered. Then it is you have to develop a plan, a biodiversity management plan, which would have this. So we included this template in the. So it's a very simple one in the tool. We made it simple because we consider that the tools are directed to level 1 to 3. So usually globally projects that are not of a big size and with big biodiversity impacts that would require extensive biodiversity management plan. So yeah. To be included are the mitigation strategy of any project impacts on the biodiversity, timelines, roles, and responsibilities, compensation plan, if any, and who is the biodiversity expert, and the reanalysis, and so the how you will reassess impacts on biodiversity and how. And the monitoring plan template, so with indicators, etc., and the modalities of their monitoring. So yeah, this I present it very quickly just for you to know that there is this template in the tool. Yeah. So yeah, just a few additional elements. So this should be developed, yeah, if a PS or S6 are triggered, which means either at the screening the site is located close to a protected area or any area of ecological interest. That includes migratory routes, which is a bit more, I mean, not a bit, it's quite more complicated. It's the corridors of migration for any terrestrial, aerial, or water aquatic species. And those can be identifiable via IBAT, but also this is where it's also interesting to talk to your protected areas, to the department authorities that are in charge for those topics in the area.
Ok, il n'y a pas de problème. Mais moi,
there is a yeah, okay. Yeah, and and in this case you always will need the support of an expert, so whether in-house for bigger structures or external expertise. So you have to identify biodiversity experts who can conduct the relevant expertise. So it's obviously not a full-time job unless it's really a bigger project with significant impacts. But yeah, this is something to be budgeted. Yeah. So just to understand the logic of biodiversity impact. So here we are really talking if PS6 or OS6 are triggered. So if there is, we are within or close an area with, if the project has a significant impact on biodiversity. So, and this is, in general, this is the hierarchy we always apply. So by order of importance and urgency and what we prefer to do. So obviously the very first thing we try to do is to avoid the impact or the risk. So this is what we do as screening. We avoid the site if the impact is there. So we find an alternative site. If we cannot avoid the impact, then we try to minimize it. So it's at design stage. We change the design of our project or we adapt it so that the impact is minimum. So this is in order of priority of what we will do regarding biodiversity risks. Third possibility, minimize also includes attenuation measures. So within the design of a project or the construction or operation, we have measures that will reduce significantly the impact of the project on the biodiversity. Then restoration. So we have to cut a little to clear a little bit of land for a project. Then after the project ends, we restore it. And the last resort is to offset, to compensate for the. So we have a negative impact in a certain location. We cut 3 trees here, we plant 9 there to compensate. And this is really the last resort. There is a lot of talk about compensation and offset, but clearly for international standards, it's really we only do it if none of the other solutions work. For the residual impact that has not been avoided, minimized, and cannot be dealt with through restoration, then we can consider that okay, we destroy this part of this site, we will create a new site, compensate somewhere else. And compensation means that we have to, we don't only plant trees, we ensure that they actually grow into, so there is a monitoring and a supervision of to be conducted. So offset compensation is quite is costly and in time. So this should not be a topic for level 1 or even usually level 2 projects. We try really to avoid, and if there is any impact, to minimize it. Yeah, so this is a little, I don't know if it's of interest for you, because I think in terms of biodiversity, you seem to be quite knowledgeable already. Is it, can you just, by reaction, using a thumb up or thumb down? Is there a thumb down in the reactions? No. Yeah, so just how do we do that? Maybe, Rin, this is the moment when I would need your help. To know if it's interesting for you to go through this mini case. So what to do, we have a site, a small site that is close to a town and 400 meters away from a key biodiversity area, and what to do in this case. Do you want to go through that, or should we want to go to the next topics? Is it of interest for you to run this mini case? If it is, I don't know, maybe you can do a thumb up or write in the chat yes or no.
There was one thumb up. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's go through the mini case. Let's say that you secure a flat, cheap, and well-positioned piece of land for a 300 kilowatt peak project near a growing town. The land is obviously empty, so it's degraded shrub, and no biodiversity screening is run, and because there is obviously nothing there, so you think that okay, we can just go for it. At the due diligence process, IBAT shows that there is at 400 meters away from the site, there is a key biodiversity area on a seasonal bird migration corridor. So we are on what I was talking about before, a corridor of migration for birds. And so, yeah, when that happens, the consultant will say, and the financier will say, okay, we have to assess whether we can actually develop the project there or not. So this is a clause that will pause the disbursement and all the investment process until there is expertise and the expert says, yeah. So yeah, 2 questions, and you can, if you want, so 2 solutions you can write in the chat, or if you want to express it vocally, keeping it short, you can also raise your hand and answer. So what should have you done? So this is a bit obvious, but what would have the screening, if you followed the screening checklist, what would have it shown, and what should you do now? We give you maybe a couple of minutes if you want. So either answer in the chat, or if you want, you can raise your hand and speak. I don't see all the. I don't see everyone, but I don't see a raised hand. But feel free if you feel like you want to answer vocally. It's very welcome.
And you can do it in French if you want.
Yeah,
And we
also.
can, yeah.
Also, as a side information, we might extend a little. So you are obviously free to leave before the end, before at the time that we said initially, but we might extend a little bit by half an hour more. We'll try not to keep the time, but it might be that the training lasts a little bit more because we still have a lot to cover. So there is no answer. So we will run it directly. So obviously, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, if you followed the screening, indeed, thank you for that answer. You're on IBAT and you see that you are close to. So in this case, when you see you are close to such a key biodiversity area, you already know that you have to get in contact with the ESG officer of your financier or to reassess. Or there will need to be further assessments. You can't go forward if you want international financing without further expertise. And so the answers we had here are, so first of all, the little trick here is that it's not your project is not within a KBA, it's adjacent. And still, adjacent means that there might be impacts. So because it's not within or overlapping with the site doesn't mean that it's not taken into consideration. So there is no official rule of how far a project should be from a key biodiversity area or a particularly sensitive area. Most often the distances that are taken are either 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers. This kind of, it depends. The law also can establish buffer zones around protected areas or certain specific areas, so it depends on national law. International standards, they don't set really typical rules. The conservative way is to say, okay, anywhere within 5 kilometers radius of any area is considered as potentially requiring further assessment. However, a small solar mini grid with little impacts in terms of noise, in terms of dust, in terms of size of the site, of circulation, because all of those elements, traffic, are potentially disturbing for the biodiversity. So first of all, if you are not sure, if you are within 5 kilometers, if it's a very small site, you can say, okay, we are 4 kilometers away from the from that area. It could be okay, but still check with your financier if they agree with that. If you are within 2 kilometers, I would say you're already in the really critical zone. And here we are 500 meters. Is for sure you have to pause for this site and make sure that you can go forward. So then from there, you need the intervention of a specialist. You need someone who so you will hire, or the financier if you that you have a technical assistant facility, or will need to send during ESDD processes. It happens that further, I mean the environmental and social action plan in this case will include assess the biodiversity status and impact of your project, and raise eliminate any make sure that the project doesn't impact and that you establish the proper mitigation measures. So this is time, money, because you have to pay for a consultant that will work a few days, produce a report, etc., and it would have to be validated by your financier, etc., with the risk also that the financier say, okay, it's not possible because it's really too close, so you have to change sites altogether or to find another finance institution. So I mean, this is really critical, as you know. So this is avoidable just at screening with IBAT and with local authorities. So the question, if in the case the national law gives an option to go ahead and set other studies, so that's a very important question, and this is the rule that you always have to consider regardless of the topic: biodiversity, land acquisition, indigenous people, any law, any topic, environmental and social topic. The law is rarely enough to be compliant with international standards. So if the law allows certain practices, you always have to check if you are compliant with international standards. A few examples: minimum salary. Minimum salary in the law can be under what is considered as decent salary by according to international standards, and in this case, you will respect the law giving the minimum salary, but in terms of international standards, you will still be under the threshold that is considered as decent salary for living, and then you can be considered as non-compliant with international standards. Land acquisition, we will look at the topic because this is one of the topics where the law and the international standards, even though many countries are now rising improving the legal framework, it's still the law is, I don't think it's ever enough. Following strictly the law in land acquisition is never enough to be compliant with international standards. So you have to, on top of the legal requirements, you have to respect the law. That's an unavoidable. I mean, any internationally compliant project is legal, follows the law, but also has additional requirements.
There's
Yes,
also a question.
There is a question, yeah. Seeing that there was mention of the KBA being near a seasonal burst corridor, would there be need to find out which species it is and consequently run them through the IUCN red list? So this is something, of course, if you know how to do it, do it. I mean, obviously, if you can add information and do your own your self-assessment, if you have knowledge of the biodiversity topic, it's always welcome, and you also it helps you have a better and clearer idea. In this case, whether the species is endangered or not will indeed affect the decision, because if the species is endangered, then you really rise the risk, and it becomes more critical. However, in general, for you, I mean, especially for level 1 developers, running IBAT is enough, and knowing how far you are, and then talk to your financier, and then you can see if you need additional expertise or not, and how to document that case. But indeed, if you go to your financier and tell them, okay, the species is least concerned or not threatened according to the IUCN red list, then it can be an element for that the impact is lesser. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big topic, and it's interesting because it's the next question about clusters and batch authorization. So yeah, this is a very tricky topic, because and this is why the initial screening is crucial. If you screened upfront and you know that all your sites are free from IBAT risks, from being close or within a critical area, then yeah. But if your batch of I don't know, you give the example of 40 sites is already in the process, and you ask for international finance, and they find out, and it's the due diligence finds out that one of the sites or several of the sites are in critically sensitive areas. So it will depend on the financier, but in general, they will probably ask you to either remove or change those sites. So yeah, it's there. I don't have really an answer for you. This is the batch permitting brings a layer of complexity. I mean, it's great for in terms of costs, especially for environmental and social assessments and everything. But it poses these kind of risks. Yeah. So this, I mean, the only clear answer I can give you is that screening is the key, really. That's why we're really advocating for prior, for screening. I don't know if Karen is here and wants to add on what I'm saying. If you have, feel free to intervene. But only if you have.
I can, Gillian, actually. I was just looking at the question. I just wonder, from a lender perspective, as you say, it would be a bit of a red flag to have a site that is in a protected area. And looking at the query about the multiple sites, I just wonder if, I mean, a question back to the person who asked the question, actually, if you've got a batch, I'm not familiar with this, okay, the batch tendering, just don't develop one of those sites. I mean, is that not possible? Just to say, what, you know, if you've done your biodiversity assessment and it turns out that one of those sites is likely to raise a red flag with the developer, do you then not just exclude that particular site? Is that possible?
Yeah, that would be actually, that would be the
solution, I guess.
I'm surprised that the batch would be become ineligible because one site would be changed or abandoned. I mean, changed, yes. Yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting topic. If you want to develop in the chat, feel free to do so. And if we have time, maybe at the end of the session, or later on, also we can have exchanges around the topic. I mean, I don't know if we can go much further than what was just said, but yeah. Feel free to ask further questions or answer Karen's question in the chat. And thank you for this is a great question. Yeah. So I think, well, about biodiversity, we went through most of what we wanted to say. We can have a pause now, or we can go through land acquisition and then have a pause. How is everyone? If you want to pause now, can you, either write pause in the chat or thumb up and otherwise we will go through land acquisition, which will take probably around half an hour now. Hopefully a bit less. Okay, so no pause. Great. Okay, so land acquisition and population displacement, which is probably the most complex and biggest topic we want to talk about today. So when does resettlement, so we talk about displacement, resettlement. Resettlement applies usually more to physical displacement, so when people lose home or shelter. But yeah, we talk about resettlement as a general term for any activity or shelter and home that is lost or affected by a project. So the rule to remember is that it doesn't matter what the surface, what activity, who, whether there is a title or a formal a proof or not. If anyone is using the site or used it in the recent past, and might use it again for any kind of activity of economic livelihood, or also cultural value, this might trigger PS5. So The basic definition is if your project has moved the home or structure, so physical displacement, or makes someone lose income or access to a resource, economic, then you trigger OS PS or OS 5 with or without formal land title. So we will go through examples, we'll talk about it further, but it's really, that's the complexity, and that's where the law is completely below, like very much stricter in who it allows to be compensated, because the law says usually, I mean, I'm talking about public project or public projects of public utility, because when it's private, it's the law might is also different laws apply, but the law usually only takes into account people who have a formal use of the land, so the owners, people who have concession, rent, etc., but or formal paper. And certain laws allow traditional law, but still with proof. But I don't think any law country legal system takes into account informal users of the land. And this is an obligation from the international standards. So regardless of the surface, so even the smallest piece of land will be, we have to look at the use. And it also includes, and this is particularly important, distribution lines. So there is your project site, but also the right-of-way of whatever electric poles or lines that you will use. So whatever land that you are authorized to use, or you acquire or have a deal to use is considered here. So the rule here, and especially for level 1 developers, is avoidance. So avoid any all physical displacement. That's an exclusion right away. You don't want to have a site where you have to move someone's home, and avoid, if you can, also any economic use or any resource use. This is a little bit easier because since your site is quite small, usually it will be in an area where people can just use the land right to it. So you just have to identify who was using the land and to document and have a conversation with the proper users and authorities, and then and document all of it and reach a consensus so that that it's easy for them to use the same. So if you're, I don't know, if for example people are there are cashew trees all over the place, and there is one on the site that you will not remove, but it's on the site and you will block access to it. If there are cashew trees all over the place, well, you're not really, so this you can just document that people, well, you were using those 1 or 2 cashew trees but that they are all around, so it's not such a loss for them. So yeah, so for economic displacement, we have a bit more flexibility. So definitions. If anyone, does everyone know the difference between physical and economic displacement? So physical, loss of shelter of structure. So loss of home, or shelter, or of any physical infrastructure, so home or building. So if your project requires that such structures will be removed and someone will lose the place where they live, so this here we talk about physical displacement. It's a no-go for a level 1 project. and for level 2 to be avoided. And then we have thresholds depending on the financiers of how many physical displacement, how many people or households we allow in order for it not to be to be manageable by the project regarding its size. And so this is physical displacement. And economic displacement, it's any loss of income or access to any form of resource on the land. So if one person loses livelihoods or revenues or access to a certain resource on the land, we talk about economic displacement. So the rules are the international standards require compensation at full replacement value. So this is but this is valid for both. So if someone loses an infrastructure, so if you have to destroy something that someone built, or if you have to destroy a home or a house or whatever building, you have to identify the owner, the occupants, their families, etc. So everyone has to be identified clearly, and you also need to know their resources. So there is a socioeconomic survey to conduct, and the compensation for the house or the home will need to be at what we call full replacement value. So it has to be the full cost plus the transaction costs. Informal occupants are covered. So once again, the person doesn't have a title. Doesn't matter if they are living on the land; they need to be compensated. And one rule that applies to everything, whether it's physical or economic, is that compensation measures have to be completed. So people who are displaced need to be compensated before the project starts. So yeah, I mean, all of those rules, they explain why it's a no-go for level 1, because you have to. So the process is to establish a deadline for people to candidate, to apply for compensation. So to identify themselves as occupant or user of the land of any kind. So you first do a tour to identify who is there, and then you set a deadline until which people can show up, and you have to communicate this deadline in ways that are understandable by all the possible affected people. And then you also have to look into every application to check whether it's realistic or not, to define compensation measures for each type of compensation, whether it's physical structure, home, revenue, etc. And then you have to agree with your counterpart about those compensation measures, and offer also alternative options. And so in terms of economic displacements, the idea is to offer, so if you move someone's land where they were planting, even if it's not their land, sorry, if you remove someone's activities, so they were using it as agricultural land or herding, or for pharmaceutical, were harvesting plants for pharmaceutical use, or I don't know. In any case, you have to identify the use and find a way to compensate, either in nature, which is usually favored by the PS and by the international standards, or in cash. But usually we prefer, for example, if someone's cultivating a plot, we prefer to give them a plot of same or bigger size and same or better quality. So that's the rule. Also, you always give something that is either the same level or better. So you never compensate with something that is lower in quality or in livelihoods that they will. And it's even more complex than that, because if you look at agriculture, for example, if they are currently growing, so the crop that is lost if you start your works at that moment, you have to compensate it as well. So you have to think compensating the land itself, find them, either offer them another land or another livelihood that is equivalent that they might also want, and also the immediate loss of the crop. If you have to cut fruit trees, for example, you have to look at the age of the tree. So there are also, the law often sets values, but the values are always outdated. Not always, but most of the time they are from 10, 15, 20 years ago. They don't really necessarily reflect market value. And then the age of the tree, a tree that is 5 years old or 12 years old is different production and different, etc. So if you compensate by planting trees somewhere else, you have to take into account the time before those trees are productive. So I'm just giving those examples to say it is a process, and this process, if you trigger PS OS 5, if you can have direct exchange, if it's a limited number and the impact is not so it's not important, a limited number of affected people or households, you can have a documented, concerted, participative process where you decide and agree on compensation modalities. But beyond a certain number of people affected, you will have to have a consultant or a specialized a person or a company to do the work, or NGO to do the work. So to prepare for physical displacement, what you call a resettlement action plan, and for economic displacement, what we call a livelihood restoration plan. I will go into more detail of that. So this was just an introduction. I give you many details just to, it's details you're familiar with anyways, but just to cover how vast and complex the topic is. And one other topic is voluntary land donation, which is quite frequent in the case of mini-grids, where since the land is small and it benefits the community, very often the community will donate the land, or a private owner will donate it to the project, or let you use it for free. And this is you have to bear in mind that this is very also how do you say? There are strict criteria in the international standards, and so 5 of them. The person or community or entity who gives the access or gives the land has to understand what they are giving and exactly the value, and so genuine information, and they have to have the right to refuse. So this has to be proven and documented. It has to be free of coercion. So there is no pressure from any authority, any chief or developer, and no penalty if someone refuses to donate land. We're talking, for example, also on the right of way. So if on the way you have your of distribution line, if on your distribution line there is a part of a plot that belongs to someone, or and it's really so small that they will be asked to give that, but it's less land to cultivate, for example, or etc. So there has to be a process really of consultation and consultation that you can prove or document that it's the information is complete, that there is no coercion, that the actual person or representative consents, so that the person who is giving their agreement is the person who actually is using the land or has the right on the land, or etc. So typically, if the chief signs for a collective for land that belongs to several people, or where there are different claims, this is a no-go. The donation has to be represent if it takes livelihood from. So, if, for example, if there is donation of land, of agricultural land, it has to represent a non-significant part of the revenues of the person who donates. So usually we say if giving the land takes a significant part of someone's livelihood or revenues, it's also not voluntary land donation. It's not compliant. And as always, and this is, we can't repeat it enough, document everything in the land acquisition process. Whatever exchange you have, whatever consultation you have, at least name of the people consulted. I mean, have a register of all your consultations with and with the main topics and conclusions of every exchange, and any decision has to be written, and signed, so every step of the way you need to be able at the due diligence stage to prove to your financier what you did, and who you met with, and and voluntary land donation is particularly sensitive for financiers, so this is why we focused on that here as well. So when we screen for population displacement, so the screening toolkit, you remember, has exclusion and then non-critical criteria. Exclusion criteria is, so here the words are important. Does the project require physical resettlement, so any physical resettlement, or significant economic displacement? We will talk about the threshold, what significant means here, but it's one of those or both. Any physical displacement or significant or significant economic displacement. Yeah, so everything we said already, with or without legal title. So it includes informal settlers, seasonal users. So there is insistence on women who occupy land without registration, because this is often overlooked, and especially if you only talk to the authorities, they will often forget about or not mention those when they have rights under the international standards. Yeah. And so check for any informal user, not only registered landowners, so all of them, and pay particular attention to women who use or occupy land without a formal title. Yes. So we will talk about the two documents, so resettlement action plan and where is the other one? And livelihood restoration plan, which is not here, but okay. We'll talk about them later, but they are really for level 2+ projects. Level 1s should not have to develop any of those plans. We will talk about it in a second. So what to do? At the exclusion criteria stage, so during your screening, so as we said, you walk the full site perimeter. So of course you looked at satellite images before. On satellite images, sometimes you can recognize that here it's cultivated, or so you can already have or here there are trees. Trees often belong to someone or were planted by someone. So depending on the law, it can be that you have to compensate people for the trees that are on the site. etc. So already from the satellite image, you can already have a little sense and know which things to look at on the site, and then look for any signs of habitation, structures, cultivation, cooking areas, etc. So just observe what's there on the site, and if there are signs of occupation, recent or current. Here it says ask one local person who is not affiliated with the project. It doesn't have to be only one. You can talk to the people around. Usually those exchanges, they will give you all the information you need. I mean, you have to cross-reference and etc. But usually people know who was there, who owns who, etc. It can be also a little bit. It's a bit of a tricky process because people don't know what you are here for. So the information they give you is. So this is for you to have a feel for what is told you, and as I said, cross the information, but. Usually, people will tell you there is this family that cultivates this, and etc. Or there is this, and any use will be, people know, people around. So, and then you cross the information when you talk to the traditional leaders or to NGOs, associations, etc. So this, as was you discussed. In module 2 about stakeholder engagement. This topic you can also ask in any form of consultation about land use. But yeah, at the screening process, you can just talk around. And once again, elders are often quite knowledgeable. So that's exclusion criteria. So I talked before. So if there is any question already, you can type it in the chat. I will continue and give you the overview, and then afterwards we can have an exchange if that's okay. I see that Karen has go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. I don't know if it's appropriate right now, but while you've just said about you go and you screen and you talk and it's part of stakeholder engagement, I don't know if you've emphasized up until now that it is risky to talk. It's a skilled area to engage with communities under this land acquisition and potential compensation question without raising expectations among the communities that they will get compensation, and without causing what we call induced migration and speculative land acquisition. So I'm just trying to caution that this is not something that an unexperienced person who is able to do everything for the company should not really be going around talking about, well, we might be buying some land, you'll get compensation, because it opens a Pandora's box of consequences. So sorry, it's been my experience that projects can get really tied up in knots over this question if you don't have the right people doing this consultation for you at the very beginning.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Absolutely, it's there is this opportunistic effect that is observed often. So indeed, asking the question. So yeah, it's a topic that we were going to address also later. So asking the questions and going around. One needs to be quite cautious. Also not promising anything, not necessarily not talking about compensation, or it's really just asking questions to understand what's there. But indeed, explaining what it is for can create so it's this is why also very quickly, once we identify that there is occupation on the land, if there is, especially if there is significant occupation, we will turn towards specialized consultants, and because this is really a very, very specialized area of expertise, to develop the process of identifying and compensating occupants. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, that's a critical point indeed. I mentioned before that we have physical displacement, economic displacement, and the exclusion criteria is, so I go back to the former slide, any physical resettlement or significant economic displacement. And what do we mean by significant? This is where, so we, for now, for the sake of this, the solar mini-grid sector, we are talking with financiers and between specialists. It seems that 10 households would be the criteria. So below 10 households physical displacement, it's still acceptable for level 2, 3. Beyond 10 households, then you go into category A. So here we talk about physical displacement. Now for economic displacement is more subjective. It depends on the financiers where you consider that you set the limits of, okay, now it's too much for us to compensate all those people, identify them, and start the whole process of identifying and compensating them. So we set at 25. So 25 households as really a maximum beyond which you consider category A, but many financiers they would go up to 100 or even more. So it's subjective. How many displaced households are considered? We talk about not people, about households here, not individual people. Yeah, how many are considered as the threshold beyond which it becomes too much of a consuming effort to to be value to make this site worth the effort. So a few additional or final words about that. First of all, well, screen early. It's a big topic to be looked at early on, and if you can estimate, not necessarily precisely, but at least at the screening level process, having an estimate of how many households are using the site and for what. So remember that national and international categorization and law are very, very different. Because the law allows certain things doesn't mean that you will be compliant with the international standards, especially for standard number 5. And if there was on the site where you are resettlement from the government before you arrived, or if the government or governmental authorities proceed with the resettlement for your project, you still have to go through the assessment of was it compliant with performance standard number 5. So because displacement is conducted by governmental authorities doesn't mean that it's internationally compliant, and most of the time it won't be. So this is really something to keep in mind. Yeah. So this is only for bigger projects. So if you have at least one person, one household physically displaced, or more than, let's say, 10 economically displaced, the international standards say that you have to develop a resettlement action plan or a livelihood restoration plan. Resettlement action plan, so resettlement is moving someone's home. Livelihood restoration plan is to restore their income. So physical, economic displacement. So once again, those will be written by specialists. It's not something that a non-specialist can do. In certain certain countries, the law, there are certified bureaus like for environmental impact assessment. There are specific, I think, for example, in Ivory Coast, I'm not sure, but there are countries where they take those into consideration. Also, the law might say there is a decree that says that only certified bureau can do RIP and a resettlement action plan or a livelihood restoration plan, but actually there is no actual existing list yet, or I don't know. So it's something that depends on the country, and that might be also tricky. But so that's why, again, that's why we want to avoid that and try to choose a site where there is a minimum of prior usage. So level 1 developers avoid any displacement and document it. Photos of the site, consultations, exchanges, land tenure documentation, etc. Physical displacement exclusion. And if you can't avoid minor economic displacement, document and compensate every single user, even those that are informal. And you can use the tool, the tools. So you have a tool, the screening tool, and tool 1.3 will be presented in module 4. So this is for the reporting. So how you will document those compensation and report it to your financer, or to if you are a part of a group or a bigger entity, to the headquarters. So this is for level 1. For level 2, so the recommendation is to have a land acquisition policy at a corporate level, and to have dedicated community liaison officers. So this you talked about in module 2, and if there are economic or physical displacement, economic or physical, so you will hire an accredited consultant where it's unavoidable, and conduct the proper process. So plan for it, budget it, etc. And level 3, so for bigger projects, it's usually also the case with level 2. It's not exactly the same timing, but usually those processes, they go along with the environmental and social impact assessment. So the ASIA will identify the risk of displacement, and then the process of resettlement action plan and or livelihood restoration plan will be launched. But if it's already identified before, it can already be launched before. So the idea is to go as quick as possible. So if it's identified that there will be displacements anyways, you can go ahead with RAP and LRP. And once again, the rule that compensation must be completed before construction starts. Yeah. So maybe I will. I don't know if it's good to have a pause already at this stage, or maybe question, or if I go. I'm just checking how much there is left here. Yeah, no, there is not much left. So I will continue here, and we can. We will have a little case study, and then we can have questions and a pause. So we looked at the exclusion question. Now we can look at the non-critical screening questions. So superposition of land rights or contested rights on the site. So assessing if there are, so this is really basically, who has rights on the land, and are there different, someone has a title of property, the community has other or traditional rights, or there is any conflict in the land. This is, you know already that if there is conflict on the land, it could become very quickly complicated. on land property. So that's question 1. Question 2, does the land have formal legal security documents, so property title, some form of lease, etc. So yeah, this doesn't guarantee that it's that you're good with land acquisition, but it's already a good basis. Yeah, here without documented legal security, a future ownership dispute might happen and be detrimental to your operations. The minimum requirement is a signed written agreement with the landowner or custodian and witnessed by local authority. So here then you have it doesn't cover informal use, but then you have the legal basis. Is the site currently used for crops, plantations, grazing, or any income-generating activity, including seasonal use? So yeah, this goes, for example, yeah, especially for agriculture and grazing. Depending on the moment you visit the site, you might not see that it's actually being used at other moments of the year. Is there voluntary land donation, and if so, document it. So this is in the screening tool. And does the project, this is only for level 2 and higher, does the project require significant involuntary resettlement, so more than 10 physical displacements, in which case your project is bumped into category A, which is a whole other level of due diligence, environmental and social due diligence by your financier. So that's for the non-critical screening. So the questions that that are in the screening tool, and yeah. So about non-critical screening, what we need to remember is the tenure is layered. So there are many different layers of, but you know all of it, but it's you have to document and know all of those layers on your site. Formal titles, customary rights, informal use, all of them need to be identified, documented, and compensated in case. Focus on women with informal use of the land. Meaning by focus, I mean be careful with this topic and identify them. So that's one thing. Then what we just mentioned, that the economic displacement includes seasonal and shared use. So there are a few examples here. So grazing routes, water points, gathering land, agriculture that happens at other moments in the year, etc. And this you talked about yesterday, the conflict and gender-based violence history in the area, so I don't come back on it. Yeah. So to finish on the presentation on land acquisition, a little mini case. So the case is the following. Actually, we have two mini cases in a row. So do you want to have the pause and have the mini case afterwards, or do we have the mini case now and pause afterwards?
Maybe you can present the mini case, and then people can think about it during their break.
Okay. All right. Actually, we'll even do better. We'll present both. Maybe both mini cases, because it's simple cases, and we can. All right. So first mini case is on voluntary land donation. I mean, and you saw those mini cases are quite simple. So, so you need less than half an hectare for 400 kilowatt peak site installation. And you meet the chief, the community chief, and he offers you a parcel plot as a voluntary land donation on behalf of the community. And you signed an agreement. He signs a one-page consent form for this donation. So there is, in this case, there is no survey, no individual interviews on confirmation, and no compensation. And it happens that you start the works, and so two families who farmed, who used for agricultural purposes, they lose their plots that were on this land. One of them being a female leaded household. So, and they complain to the district. So this is the case number one. What here is wrong, and what should you have done? So this is case number one. So you see the chief, they sign a paper telling you, okay, you can use this land. It's up to the project, is beneficial to the community. So go ahead, you have my approval. So that's basically the first case. And I will present to you the second case now also, that you can think about it during the pause. And we can talk about it later. So this is a small 250 kilowatt peak site on an open land where there is no home, no occupation, and so you just go ahead. It's state land, but it happens that a herder family has grazed it every dry season for several years or even decades. And once you fence the site, this family loses the access to the site. And of course, they have no title and they were never consulted. So, and a few months later, an NGO takes the case. Yeah, so you start having criticism and request for compensation from an NGO, and the lender, so your financier, identifies it at due diligence. Or actually, no, here it identifies at monitoring, and it becomes a risk for the next disbursement review. So in this case, does standard number 5 apply? And what should you have done? So a small site, nothing on the site, no particular issue. You start construction, operation, and then realize through an NGO that complains about you and publishes articles on internet and in the press that families who were using it since generations for grazing lost access to the site. All right. We already have, sorry. Okay, I will leave the land donation on the screen and
have a short break. Yes, I think that's.
Yeah. It's amazing because we have amazing answer here. That's great. Thank you so much. So let's have a break. Would 10 minutes be enough?
Yes.
So I will start again at 4:05 sharp. And we will go very quickly through this, and then Vivian, I don't know if he's already with us. Yes, he's here. We'll talk about e-waste management. And as I was afraid, we might have to go probably at least 15 minutes more. So we would finish somewhere between 4:45 and 5 p.m. Central European time. And yeah, I apologize for the delay, but it's quite a lot to cover. Yeah, thank you. So we come back at 4:05. So in 10 minutes. So welcome back, everyone. It's quite a dense training, and I hope that it also had less interactive parts than the former modules, because there is really a lot of ground to cover. So yeah, I hope you still can. It's still useful for you to follow, and we will open a field part of conversation at the end. So we will go through the little case studies afterwards, because Vivian has to leave us before at 4:30 sharp, and we wanted to have this presentation. So we will come back to the case studies afterwards, but for now, so today one of the topics we were looking at are supplier screening for batteries and solar panels, and battery and solar panel recycling. And so Vivian has prepared a presentation about what Kudura has done on the topic in Kenya. So Vivian, I leave you the field. You can tell me when to move to the next slide. And yeah, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Gilles. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vivian Venderino. I'm founder CEO of Kudura Power East Africa. We're a mini-grid developer operator that has been operating in Kenya since November 2011, when we commissioned our first mini-grid. We're currently running 32 mini-grids around 38 communities in 2 counties, Busia County in the west and Turkana County in the north. This presentation is looking particularly at the impact of longer-term operations and what, within the context of the regulation, a developer operator such as ourselves needs to do in terms of battery recycling. And so next slide, please. And so at a high level, we're going to cover the Environmental Act regulations and the definition of hazardous waste, how we as a developer operator are termed an extended producer, and that comes with responsibility, and then talk a little bit about what we've seen, and I'm sure you're seeing as well, a change in the sector where more and more lithium-ion batteries are being deployed because they are effectively more cost-effective in the long run, and the prices will come down, and what that means from a recycling perspective, particularly in Kenya. So Kenya is one of 5 countries on the continent that has well-established regulation that are regarded as exemplary in terms of implementation of that regulation and ensuring that the processing of hazardous waste is appropriately dealt with. The other 4 are South Africa, is regarded as the leader in the field, Rwanda, Nigeria, and Ghana. And then there are another 5 countries, including Uganda, Tanzania, Egypt, Cameroon, and Cote d'Ivoire, if I'm not mistaken, that are developing regulations in that sense. So what that means is there's 10 countries that are addressing the need for dealing with this problem, but the continent is 54 countries, and we know that mini-grids are being built in many more than 10 countries. So that in itself does create some downstream liability for project developers and operators, it stands. So within Kenya then, the Environmental Management and Coordination Act, Cap 387, is the principal environmental law. Within that context, there's a legal notice 121 that defines what waste is, and the management regulations issued under it. They classify batteries as hazardous waste, which triggers environmental authority licensing, manifest tracking, that is transportation, as well as penalty provisions. And what that means practically for us is whether we move batteries from point of purchase to site for installation or from site to point of disposal, we are required to have those trips tracked within the context of a manifest. Lastly, within the context of the regulation, there's Section 92, which defines penalties, which include corporate fines and potential suspension of your mini-grid production licenses. So not dealing with this kind of regulation, in fact, is quite hazardous to business. You could lose your licenses. The concept of extended producer effectively says that we as a developer operator are a polluter. After a period of time, we have hazardous waste that needs to be dealt with in a particular way. And the regulation holds us as the producer of that waste responsible for following a particular product life cycle from deployment through to disposability at the end. And then there are particular mandates that look at how lead carbon as well as lithium-ion batteries are handled separately. Lead carbon, rather old technology. There is a mature closed loop. There's local smelting infrastructure and a clear regulatory pathway. And we'll see in a little bit, in a couple of slides, how that's dealt with. LFP is classified as under emerging e-waste guidelines. And what that means is there is in country no mechanism for effectively dealing with the pyrometallurgical nature of those products. And what that means is that we, as a developer operator at end of life, need to re-export those products out of country, which then effectively comes with its own set of challenges. An LFP as a rule, waste cannot be sold to standard scrap dealers. It must be routed through licensed e-waste handlers, which at this point in Kenya are international. So that's a high-level overview of the regulation. Any questions at this point? If not, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so recycling options. I've mentioned already that lead carbon or lead acid are separate from lithium-ion. In Kenya, there are at least three companies that are certified and qualified to deal with lead recovery, as well as smelting, disposing of scrap, and casings into new components, for instance. One is ABM in Athi River. The second one is Real, also in Athi River. And that LOAC, who's our current partner, that is a certified aggregator that works across the country and delivers those waste products directly to ABM in this case. They do, in addition, assume transit liability on our behalf from the point of sign-off or handover of those products. And so that's a system that works rather well. Essentially, we are paid for that waste product, note again, lead only, on a mass basis. So it's there's a, I think it's around $60 or $70 per ton. And those products are effectively taken off our hands at our warehouse or at our site. We sign transit documentation, and LOVAC as the aggregator then has liability to make sure that that product is delivered to ABM, who then effectively takes care of the recycling. On the lithium-ion side, there's a key gap. As I said early on, this is a product that cannot be processed in country at this point. I expect that over the next number of years, that'll start to happen more and more as the demand for processing in country increases. But at this point, that is not the case. And so what that means is that we as a waste producer need to export that product under the Basel Convention. And that comes with a whole lot of regulatory, I guess, constraints, as well as the payment for the transport of that product. So if any of you have imported product in the past, you know, of course, that sea shipping goes by weight, and you're effectively paying for the transport of that product twice, which we very often don't take into account within the context of our recycling or battery replacement plans, because that is a very real cost. And so there are three companies there that serve as some form of e-waste hub: intake, registration, dismantling, consolidation, certified collection or fractional separation where that's possible. They manage downstream transboundary shipping, and the expectation is that that product goes back to its point of manufacture. I must say at this point that we have never got to this stage yet, because we have only been using lithium-ion batteries for about 3 years at this point. I'm also not aware of any companies that have actually gone through this process of doing it. But certainly looking at the regulation and dealing with these companies from the point of view of costs, I think it is a process that is onerous. Any questions at this point? Okay, next slide. So how we manage it, So our portfolio currently consists of Narada lead carbon batteries. Those are standard VRLA AGM type batteries that have been installed in 2018, 2019, 2020. And now, as of the end of or beginning of 2026, we're starting to see failures, and as a result, recycling needs that need to be covered. As I said, lithium ion in upgrades in Busia County and then Turkana recent construction under phase 5 is new technology for us. We're aware now that this constraint is going to occur maybe 5 to 10 years down the line, and that will come with additional costs. And then as kind of a further phase 6, where we're looking at electrifying Kakuma. In this case, we're talking about 1.7 megawatt hours of lithium ion batteries in one site alone. So that obviously comes with a significant cost, based again on my previous comment that was centered around the mass of this product and the sea shipping that's required to do it. So essentially, within the context of our operations, we have remote diagnostics and isolation. That means that we are monitoring battery health and plant performance remotely. And when capacity drops below threshold, that invariably results in technicians having to understand individual batteries within a battery bank, determining where that failure is occurring, and then obviously under normal PPE requirements, deactivating those batteries. There is a further complication with lead acid, and that is that in a battery bank of 24 batteries, 48 volts, the batteries don't all fail at the same time. But you need only one or maybe two to fail to effectively render that battery bank useless, unless you have additional batteries on hand that can replace the old ones under similar capacity and use cycles. So putting in 2 new batteries into a bank doesn't work, because those 2 batteries will start to degrade rather much quicker than they normally would. And so what that means is, within this context, one of the big disadvantages is when 1 or 2 batteries in a bank start to fail, effectively you're looking at retiring the whole bank, or potentially retiring the bank and keeping the ones that are still okay for backup for other sites. But it does then mean that you need to replace the entire bank. The big advantage, of course, with the lithium ion is that you don't have that constraint. You can replace individual batteries individually, because they all are typically provided with their own battery management systems. Obviously, we have a system of asset inventory management and login. Serial numbers are recorded when they come into inventory and deployed to site. Conversely, those serial numbers are recorded when they are retired. And then within that context, there is a process of packing those batteries to prevent short circuits, whether or not they are charged, packing them within the context of the regulations within ventilated wooden crates, so that they can be effectively transported within the context of avoiding physical impact. And then, as we said early on, as we implied early on, there is a manifest form provided by the National Environmental Management Authority that we sign as the producer of the waste, that the aggregator or consolidator signs as the one who's taking on liability of the waste to the point of recycling. And then finally, they're one of the recycling partners that takes that product in-house and then effectively recycles it. And they, in fact, by law, have to maintain recycling data for every single battery that they recycle by serial number. And so the theory is that at any point in time, we can request for a given serial number full traceability from end to end of that battery, and both the consolidator aggregator as well as the recycler need to provide that. And in fact, it's possible, and has happened before, that the Environmental Authority would ask that, hey, in 2018, you installed this series of batteries. Please provide us documentation that those have been disposed of accordingly. And to not do so would then trigger the penalties that I mentioned in the first slide. So that chain of custody is really important. And within that context, it ensures then that the product is tracked from coming into the country all the way through to being retired in a safely recycled form. Any questions at this point? Okay, let's move on. So another key difference between battery types is cost, right? I mentioned that typically there is an effective market price per ton or per kilogram for lead acid batteries that are effectively absorbed within the context of a structure and a system that works already within country. What that means essentially is our only cost with decommissioning is the technician's time to decommission the batteries in the site, pack them, and from that point on, we get paid effectively by weight. And it's financially, it's no longer our problem. It's dealt with and it's closed. One of the issues I think that we'll face going forward is that Turkana is actually quite a long way away from Mombasa and from Athi River near Nairobi, where these processes happen, and so those costs are likely to increase. But I must say it's a rather simple process, right? We comply with our part, which is ensuring that they're safely packed. The logistics company or the aggregator picks them up. We sign a bit of paper, and we really don't have to worry about it again unless someone asks a question. Lithium, however, is a bigger problem, as I said, because of this future financial liability that needs to be considered. And in the absence currently of a system that allows the recycling of those products in country, it does mean that you have to pay a consolidator in country. There's maritime export fees. You have to ensure that your supplier is willing to take them back, because alternatively, then where are you going to send them? So that is more and more becoming a critical part of the procurement process for lithium-ion battery banks. There is effectively zero salvage value domestically, as opposed to lead acid, which effectively means you're just paying. There's no salvage value effectively whatsoever. There are discussions around starting to use lead acid batteries, and there's a company in Uganda doing this. Lithium batteries, where they will disassemble the batteries and reuse the cells in other applications, typically in electric motorcycles and things like that. But I think that's still early days, and I'm not sure that will be viable in the long run. So from a lifestyle perspective, lithium ion, although cheaper on a per kilowatt hour basis, is a net cash outflow at the end of life because of that additional cost. And then, of course, the fact that we have sites that are very remote on unpaved roads means that the logistics cost effectively increases as well. From a governance perspective, we have this NEMA compliance and ESG strategy that is effectively monitored by the company's executive, an HSES department that ensures that we comply with the regulations every step of the way, and then local in-county staff that effectively are conversely held accountable for ensuring that this process is followed, to ensure that the company doesn't find itself in a position where it's liable because staff did not do what they're meant to do. I guess the last point here in lithium is in terms of mitigation for this future, what is really unknown cost at this point, right? Because as long as the demand is low, the price will be high, the cost of recycling will be high. As demand increases, so competition will rise and that cost will come down. But it is really just to deploy a decommissioning sinking fund, in which a fixed percent of your monthly revenue is being ring-fenced, both in cash terms, but also in your financial models, so that funds are available at the time when these things need to be decommissioned. Because from a regulatory perspective, you also don't want to find yourself in a position where you have these things stored in a container or in your warehouse when they should have been recycled. And again, if you were to get an HSES audit from NEMA or something like that, and that product was found on your premises, that will again trigger the penalties that I'd mentioned earlier. Any questions at this stage? Okay. I think we can, that effectively is the net of my presentation. That's 14 minutes, just about on time, so that's good, or just short of 20 minutes, should I say. Unless there are any questions and answers, I'm happy to end it at this point. If anybody has any other questions that come up in the course of your, the future modules within this, feel free to get my contact information from Gilles or from Rihanna. Would be happy to provide it for you.
Thank you very, very much, Vivian. Yeah, feel free to any moment if there is a question or something you would like to add or know in the chat, or once again raising your hand in the in the Teams window. So just to complete on waste management, because we don't have much time, but to say that so the tool in the health, safety, environmental, and social management plan tool in the toolkit that we produced, there is one dedicated section to waste management. So a part of it is dedicated to solar PV panels, batteries, and other e-waste. This just as an information, we won't go into detail in the detail, but there is this section in that tool, so 3.3, and with a part also that for bigger developers of suggestions of what to do. So that we won't go further on e-waste management, but if there are more questions or if you want to talk more about it, we can do it later on after we finish the general presentation. So I will now go back to our two mini cases very quickly. So there was in the chat quite an extensive answer about what invalidates land donation, and indeed there are really many possibilities of this is thank you for that in the chat for those who want to read many possibilities that can invalidate voluntary land donation. So in the case that we presented before, as you remember, a signed paper by any form of authority without consultation, additional consultation is not, or survey is not enough. You have to really understand what is happening on the land that is donated, and to so the chief is not a chief. So the sentence a chief cannot consent away community land or other people's land without a proper consultation process. So in this case, the agreement did not take into account other users. So here is the question in the screening tool, and that reminds. So in the screening tool in the toolkit, you will have reminders of what voluntary land donation is and how to check that it actually is voluntary. Viviane, go ahead. I see that you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just want to say we had exactly this similar case in Turkana County just 20 months ago, where the community leadership effectively identified what is public land, but for which land use rights existed under family. A mother, a widow with children, and it caused us no end of problems because we went through 2 cycles of getting documentation signed. Even the woman household lead signing the same documentation and then coming back and saying that she was coerced within the community. She was put under pressure by the community to get electricity through our project. And so it cost us a fair amount of money and time. And it's really important in these kind of things not to just go with what the chief of the village or whatever says, but that you make your own diligence to make sure that you have all of those things well covered, and that when particular people are affected, to have discussions with them directly. Don't be shy of those discussions, even if you feel, I think as someone had said early on, Karen had said early on, it's not an easy discussion to have because immediately you're perceived as someone who has, a means to compensate. But it's really important to do it because it's a whole lot better to pay a little bit now than end up, through that long and complicated process. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. So in this case, a chief alone cannot consent to consent away other people's land, and also, so in this case, it's another example of informal users. So in this case, it was, what was it? Families who farmed the parcel without under customary use, so without formal title, but they are still entitled to be compensated for their loss of agricultural land. I'm sorry, since we are already at the theoretically we should end now the training. I will just present a few last things. So go through the mini case and go very quickly through cultural heritage, which is not a big topic anyways but it can be a big topic if it is triggered, but so we will talk about that and then close. So and also go through the comments that were posted in the chat, because there are interesting comments there. So for the farmer who loses for the families for grazing here, so that case was so obviously not identifiable on the site at the moment of the visit because they are not there. And there is nothing visible, so you think, okay, we can go. There is no one, and then realizing that there was occupation. So this is typically a case where talking with community representatives, asking a bit if anyone is there, uses this land or not. Or talking to elders or associations, or I don't know, you quickly have the info that there is this family using the land and etc. So this is typically a situation where as a reminder, so it was the herder family using the plot for several generations, but that was not identified at the moment of the screening. This is typically this family you will need to identify them and to go with them through a process of finding alternative land for them or a way of compensation. And in this case, it's again a case of informal use, and here we have the seasonal aspect of because they were not there at the moment of the visit. So just a few words on what to report on land acquisition. So every single document about land tenure, arrangements, agreements, titles, property, lease, everything, this needs to be documented, and every interaction you have, every consultation you make, every needs to be registered, and you keep a log of that. Anyone losing land structure access, including informal, is entitled to compensation. There is a comment on the side that there is not only compensation. We will talk about it later, and also see have this idea of proportionality. Is it worth it for me to compensate or to go through the process of compensation for so many households, considering the size of my project and the budget and etc. So those are the big elements to keep in mind. To go in the chat, there was the resettlement plan includes indicative prices for compensation, and it has been observing it has been observed that the focus has been solely on compensation, even though there is not, it's not the only option in the resettlement plan. So this is not for, maybe not a topic for today, but indeed, when we look at physical and economic displacement, there is a hierarchy of measures. So for example, when we look at compensation, we will prefer compensation in nature rather than in cash. Both are possible, but in general, we prefer to replace land by land, loss of revenue by either like new training for livelihood or replacement of or training or support for other revenue generating, income generative activities, etc. So there are many different ways of compensating, supporting those families, households who are displaced beyond the sole compensation. And I mentioned also other specific examples before that, yeah. Yeah. So a short word about cultural heritage. Just as so what we consider cultural heritage is either it's either physical, tangible or not. And for what is tangible, it can be either visible or not, or buried or underground. So burial grounds, shrines, sacred trees, sacred stones, remains of old settlements, ritual sites, or it can be also be buried. So especially archaeological remains can be buried underground, and other cultural heritage elements can be either not intangible, not physical, or exist as cultural sacred elements through only the use of them. So it can be a path, a spring, a grove, a tree or trees, etc. Here it says physically ordinary and culturally not negotiable. It really depends on the consideration of the community. So how the community will perceive and identify that specific item is what makes it culturally significant or not. So all of those, it can be that. So the first step is to, through stakeholder consultation, identify the possible presence of cultural heritage elements in or close to the site. So this is like by talking to community members, elders, etc. And then the second point is if during the construction excavation works, if any, or the construction, it happens that you find one of those, or you identify one of those, the international standard requirements, and this is for any type of projects, any size, you need a change filing procedure. The good thing is that it's easy. So you have one, it's the section 9 of the health, safety, environment and social plan. This is enough. But you have to adapt it to your project and communicate it to your teams and to the contractor. And so it works like this, that if such a finding is made, stop the work, secure around the finding and protect it, notify the community or the relevant authorities, and you can only resume works once this finding has been cleared. So it's called chance find because it's when like a random finding of such an object. So this is in the plan, in the HSCS plan tool, and so I just and this is really the requirement. So requirement one at screening, answer this question. Does the area include a cultural heritage site, archaeological object, or a site of religious significance to the community? So this you answer by through stakeholder engagement, through talking with the community. And then number 2 is having in your procedures, environmental and social procedures, or HSE procedures, the change find procedure, and that's it. That's what you are expected to do regarding cultural heritage. So that will be it regarding cultural heritage. And to finish with the presentations and the topics we wanted to address today, I can't. No, it's still not working. Okay, my PowerPoint is blocked. Yeah. Going back to going back to the topic of supply chain and batteries and panels life cycle. Just to close on this, so the HSES management plan has a section specifically on supply chain screening and assessment. So just showing it here, I will not go into the detail. Just one thing about supply chain screening is that you are requested to, international standards to follow most financiers' requirements. You will need to request from your supplier documentation and proof that they are compliant with international standards. And the fact that you sent those requests that either it was refused or not answered is by itself, it's usually enough. It's for smaller developers. You are not requested to go much further because you are not dealing with big quantities of those, and you don't have the means to go far in the assessment. So you can follow what's in the screening checklist. Ask your supplier for, and if they don't answer, which will be most of the time the case because you are not a significant client for them, this is usually enough. So just proving that you asked for information and then escalate it to your finances ESG officer or to your management is enough for that. I already talked about the waste management plan, so I won't go back on it. Just before we finish, we wanted just to have a little overview, if you just for a couple of minutes quickly, regarding e-waste following Vivian's presentation, if you feel like answering those few questions. So when a battery bank reaches end of life in a remote site, question 1, where does it physically go? Second, question number 2, who pays for the transfer to the destination? And question number 3, and this is the most crucial to understand, the country and where you operate, and does this country have certified e-waste disposal providers? So I know we are already beyond time. If you feel, if you would just quickly answer those questions, just to have a little feel about e-waste management and where we're all at, and then we will conclude in 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes. So where do you send your batteries or battery banks when at the end of life? And does the country where you operate have certified e-waste disposal or companies that can dispose of those batteries? So just answer country and yes or no. So I don't see answers in the chat, so maybe I hope we didn't lose everyone. So feel free still to... yeah, okay. Answers are coming. Thank you. Yeah, Kenya and Nigeria, yeah, have recycling. So you have an intermediary collection point, and from there, once you reach a certain threshold, collection by the certified disposal, yeah. And you pay for the logistical costs. Thank you for that answer. All right, so yeah, so Madagascar, no provider for lithium-ion batteries or solar panels, but for lead batteries, yes. Thank you for that answer. Yeah, so the idea here was really to illustrate that it is a cost, indeed, so that you know already, and that also there is a variety of situations depending on the country. So international standards, you can continue answering if you feel like it. So what you are supposed to do based on international standards or finances requirements. So or recommended. The recommendations are to plan for the disposal at the stage right away from the environmental and social impact assessment stage. If you can negotiate, obviously negotiate the take back upfront with your supplier. So do the supply chain screening and document any refusal or lack of answer. Those are the big recommendations. And there are, so in terms of monitoring waste volumes and destination, chain of custody records for hazardous components. So follow up on the origin of, so that on the level of environmental and social compliance of your suppliers. So here there is the example of the percentage of procurement and an origin attestation, so that you have proof of compliance of your supplier, and the log of refusal to answer on environmental and social practices. So this is a general conclusion on the life cycle, but the most important is is the tools that we presented and the fact that especially for level 1, documentation is key. So So today we talked about land and resettlement, biodiversity, cultural heritage, and e-waste and supplier screening based on tool 1.1 screening and tool 3.3 health, safety, environment, and social management plan. And module 4, which is next week, we'll talk about so systems and reporting. So how you turn all of those tools into a functional environmental and social management systems that you can that will be compliant with your finances requirements. Human resources and organizational arrangements, especially for environmental and social management. Reporting to your lender, so you will look into the reporting tool that we created, and you will also address the main questions that were raised during the 3 modules. And so if there is anything you would like to look more into detail during module 4 as before, please feel free to write it here in the chat if there are any topics, or communicate with the ARE, sorry, with Okan and the team. So 2 things now. As always, a little survey at the end of this very dense presentation, and I hope you could get some substance from it. So on the one side, if you have questions or topics you would like to address, please write down in the chat. Some of them we can answer now in the next 5-10 minutes. Others we will leave for module 4 or for written answers. Especially on land acquisition, there might be more questions, I suppose, and we don't really have time, and there was not enough space to really have interactive exchanges. So that's one thing, and so feel free to use the chat as for your questions. And then 5 questions to conclude. So question 1, how do you feel navigating the screening toolkit? The screening tool. So that was presented to you today in more detail. Question number 2, how useful, so it's the same question after every module, how useful do you find the proposed approaches, tools, and what was presented during this presentation? Question number 3, do you feel more confident regarding land acquisition and population displacements after this training? And more, do you understand more what is expected of you? Question number 4, same question about biodiversity and e-waste management. And question number 5, so as I said before, any topic you would like to explore more in the last module next week. So thank you for the answers. So yeah, we will wait a little bit for all the answers. And yeah, if there is any question in the meantime, feel free to also regarding any topic in the presentation. Okay, really, really happy that this could help. That's amazing, really. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay, overall, it's quite positive. Yeah, indeed, local context adaptation, and especially I think you operate in Madagascar, and there are many specificities, legal and logistical also specificities to Madagascar that are, yeah, make it quite understandable that you have this comment. Yeah. And more about HR and standard reporting to better. Yeah, so this is exactly in the focus of module 4. So yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I see that there is a notation 3, so average on how useful did you find the proposed approaches. If you feel like here or later on providing a little bit more, yeah, same also in the last answer, what you would have maybe expected or liked to see that would have been more useful for you, that would be quite helpful. Also, we could. So yeah, if you feel like developing the two persons who gave the note 3 to question number 2, so to how useful do you find the proposed approaches, that is in between, that's interesting for us. Maybe we can improve on certain topics. So if there are specific topics or methods that yeah, you would like us to develop further. So yeah, I think we will close with that. Thank you so much. If you, for those who feel like putting on the another answer, okay, quite positive also, on human resources. Okay, that's in the topics. Yeah, reporting. It's part of. Okay, perfect. So module 4 is designed quite adequately. Happy to read that. All right. So yeah, thank you so much for your presence this afternoon and your attention, because it was quite dense and less interactive. So for those who feel like switching on the camera just to have a little feel of the room before saying goodbye, and yeah, thank you again. Next module, maybe I don't know when. What's the date? I will check. Rin, I don't know. Maybe you know.
It's next Friday, June 26th.
Yeah, so Friday next week, and it's earlier in the day. It's at
Yes, in the
10
morning. Yes, it's in the morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the morning. So yeah, Friday the 22nd in the morning. Yeah, thank you for you attending and for your participation today. And wish you a wonderful evening and a lot of success in all of your activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.